Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Menelik, and in this video we are doing another reaction to another podcast. This is my first time watching this guy podcast, but I've seen a lot of his reels on Instagram and YouTube short. And the guys that is interviewing today is Alex Hormozi. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break down whatever Hormozi is talking about. I follow Hormozi. Is big into business, financial freedom, entrepreneurship, and that's something that I'm into as well. It ties back into the idea of getting better, self-improvement, and then, finding ways to improve yourself, improve your life, improve everything for the better. But before we move forward, I just want to let you guys that I appreciate you. I've seen growth on the channel, and I think the message that we're pushing is a message that is impactful, and so I'm going to continue on making those reaction videos because there are a lot of good advices that come from it, things that I learned from myself, things that you guys can learn from. And then also down in the description, I put list of things that I use, like kits, or like, the cameras I use or the computers I use for my editing. If any of you want to start YouTube or filming video, or you need camera, or some of the books that I read, and some of the books that I read, so I put them down in the description. You can just click the link to go get those things. And without any further ado, let's get into the video.
If you suffered from racial inequality, if you suffered from gender inequality, you would be completely justified in the fact that you are not achieving the things that other people who didn't have those disadvantages have achieved. And I say this as a white guy who was born in America to a doctor father. But at the same degree, you have the opportunity that Chris nor I have, which is that you can be an inspiration to people who went through the same thing. Because I can promise that there is somebody who has had it worse and has done it better.
Alex Hormozi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, man. One of my favorite things to do is to scrape through people's Twitters that are aphorists and come up with little pithy statements and then break them down. So I want to go through some of the things that I've learned from you over the last year or so, go into those. And then there's some talking points that I don't think I've heard you speak about before as well. I want to get onto.
Amped.
Beautiful. So the first one is, so many lives would transform overnight if they realized my life sucks, I have nothing going for me, really means I have nothing to lose, and that makes you a very dangerous person.
So in any kind of game position, so like in business, right? Every position has advantages and disadvantages. And a lot of people look at the really big guys and they're like, man, they'll look at me, they're like, must be easy for Alex, right? And I remember when we had gym launch and we had a very big company, I would tell the guys who are coming up, I was like, if you're trying to compete against me, I was like, you have advantages. I was like, if you're on a sales call, you're like, listen, you're just a number to Alex. You're never going to talk to Alex, right? Here with me, you're going to get my attention. I'm the one, right? I was like, that's how you're going to throw stones at me. I was like, but on the flip side, if it's me marketing to the masses, I'm going to be like, this kid's in his mom's basement. He has no idea what he's doing. He's been in business for 12 months. And of course he has no idea. Like, wouldn't you want somebody who has thousands of success stories behind it because we've made a system? Like, both sides have advantages. And so what happens is people are in this small position where they're more nimble, they can give more personalized attention to people, etc. And they see it as a pure disadvantage. And so you can flip the fact that you have nothing going for you with you have nothing to lose. And that means that you can take lots of risks very quickly and end up in the exact same position you are, which is nothing. And so if you eliminate downside, it should decrease your action threshold, meaning you should be able to do more things faster rather than do fewer things because you don't have a great life or things going for you. And so I think if people flip that, a lot more people would take action because they actually realize the advantage of their position.
Real quick here, I think the idea here is that what it's trying to say, what I'm taking from it is that the idea is that when we're at the bottom, like when you don't have that much going for you, you may have a job, but it's not like a career that's going to lead somewhere, or you just don't know what you want to do, or you just haven't figured out the game of life yet. You don't have that much to lose, but sometimes we put in our minds the idea of like being embarrassed. It's like, okay, what if I do this? What will people think about me? And that kind of like, put pressure on us saying that, okay, if I do this, it's going to be risky. However, if you don't have anything going on for you, might as well try anything and then see what works. Try things and learn from experiences than, doing nothing and complaining about your situation type of way. That, for example, like YouTube channel, starting a YouTube channel, you see people that have, tens of thousands of subscribers, millions of subscribers. You are like, oh man, these people, they are so good on cameras. They talk so well. They know what they are doing. They got it all figured out. It must be easy for them. I'm trying to start my YouTube channel, but I'm only getting 1 views, etc. And then, I don't even want to start a YouTube channel because I don't think I have that kind of confidence moving forward. Or maybe the things that I'm going to talk about will be embarrassing, and what will my friend that knows me will think about what I'm going to say, etc. Which is a pressure that we usually put on ourselves. And it's a fear of embarrassment, fear of failure, fear of being criticized. But in life, there's no one rule to this game of life. You figure it out, you create path, and then you move forward. Is by trying things, by testing different things, that you find what you are better at. You find the things that you are good at, and you share the things that you care about, not what everybody care about. Sometimes some people disagree with what you think, but does it really matter? You just got to live and move forward. As long as you are moving in the right direction, as long as you are not doing anything crazy, anything that can cause harm to someone else, keep moving forward. Do some things that is improving your life day to day, every single day, on a day-to-day basis. I think that's just what he's saying here.
Jack Butcher says you get rich by taking lots of risk with small amounts of money, and you stay rich by taking small amounts of risk with lots of money.
Yes, I wholeheartily agree. I didn't know that was his quote.
He may have repurposed it. There's something called Churchillian drift. Do you know what that is?
No.
So it's a phenomenon.
Everything's Churchill at the core.
It's the opposite. It's that quotes that weren't said by Churchill often get like erroneously attributed to him. It's like all quotes lead back to Churchill, even though they didn't.
And Socrates.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I think that Churchill once said that you get rich by making large amounts. It's like, no, he fucking... But there's another one as well that a good friend James Smith talked about, which is, if you're succeeding at a job that you hate, imagine how good you'd be at a job that you loved. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the same. This person is starting from essentially zero. How much fucking worse can it get?
Right. Is the downside. If you can eliminate someone's downside for action, it's like then it should bias you towards taking action.
Why is it that people in that case, if they do have nothing to lose, still feel like they have lots to lose?
Because I think most of the times, I think this is really important, is that they have nothing objectively to lose. And so everything that they feel like they have to lose is purely made up in their mind. It's stories they tell themselves about what other people are going to think about them when those people aren't even thinking about them to begin with, right? But like, that's where they live all of their lives, or live out all of the potential downside, is in the mere reflection of what other people will think about them in the future should they fail.
That's exactly what I was saying. The idea is that we have that how do you say it? We have that speaker in our mind that is telling us that, people are thinking this about me if I do this, or I shouldn't do this because what will people think about what I'm doing. Fear of embarrassment, fear of criticism, fear of failure. That they will see that I'm failing, but you are not going to get any better if you are not failing. If you are starting something new, if you are doing something that you have never done before in your life, expect failure. Expect that you are going to fail your way into success, because through failure, you learn. Through failure, you gain experience, and then you move forward, you get better. The idea is that, we are looking at this thing on a long-term horizon. We're not just doing it for 1 weekend, we're quitting. We are doing it for 10 years. 10 years to see how this thing is going to work. Every single day, I'm going to show up. Sure, I will see failure. I will face failure, but I'm going to learn from it. And then I keep refining myself. I keep getting better. What could I be like? What would I become after doing this for 10 years, refining, getting better, twisting things and improving? Like, That's the idea. I think that's the core or the inner sense of self-improvement, which is getting better every day.
Or live out. And I think that is like, if we were trying to get real and I'm like talking to somebody like, well, I mean, because I know that if I actually had somebody in front of me, they'd start squirming, right? If I said the first thing, right? Like, you have nothing to lose. And then, because then they do have something to lose, and I just have to name it for them and be like, okay, who's the person in your mind? Who's the voice? It's like, blah, 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 6 questions deep. It's my uncle. Okay. Why? Like, let me state it this way. Will your belief that you're going to be viewed as a failure by your uncle be the sole reason that you live the rest of your life below your potential and regret everything that you don't do because of Uncle Tom? That's the wrong one. Uncle Harry. When you say it like that, all of a sudden they're like, I don't want to let Uncle Harry have that kind of power. And then all of a sudden it breaks, and then they like get free of it. And so I think it's getting really specific and really narrow on because people say it's society, it's other people. It's like, it's usually one or two voices. And if you can get really specific on whose voice it is, then you can name it. And then like, I think I'm a big believer in like shame only exists in the shadows, which is like, once you put it in the light, you look at it and you're like, my mom? That was really it. Like, when I really think about it, it's because it's not even just my mom. It's my mom in this circumstance. When I come back home for Thanksgiving, I just am so afraid of the comment that she's going to make. It's like, well, what if we confront that? Okay, your mom, you sit down at Thanksgiving dinner and you haven't made money yet and you quit your job. Now what? Is that better than you spending the next 60 years hating her or resenting her for the fact that she held you back? And then it's like, when you give the real scenario, they're like, well, shit. And then like this weight comes off and they're like, fuck, I guess I should do this. And you're like, yeah.
Shame only exists in the shadows is nice. Yeah. I like that. And it definitely is cleansing to just be like, look, here it is out in front of you. Yeah. And you realize just how irrational it is.
Because we don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
This one, you just remind me of a talk that I think I had like just a couple of days ago with one of my friends about the idea of how do you say about the idea of boundaries, having boundaries, to having your boundaries set so that people don't cross it. Which she was telling me that that she tried to be nice, and it's hard for her to set those boundaries because it may make the other person feel uncomfortable, etc. Which to me is like, okay, but if you do that, that feeling of you being the one who's feeling uncomfortable in the situation over and over again for years because you're not saying anything, where will it go? Doesn't that gonna come back and haunt you in some way down the path? So when he's talking about, having that voice in your mind that is telling you that, that one person will be disappointed if I do this, and then you secretly not doing the things that you want to do because of the opinion of that person, may lead to an unconscious hate, or an unconscious hate toward that person, because in your unconscious, it's like, oh, I didn't do this because of that person. You blame the person. However, you are the one who makes the decision. So it's like, how can we take that speaker, that voice in our head, and put it under the light, and then scrutinize it? Know that, okay, I'm gonna do this. Okay, I'm afraid of what people are gonna think about it. It's normal, but I'm not gonna let that stop me, because this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I want to do, and this is how I want my life to be in the future. So I'm gonna do it anyway, and whatever people think that this is whatever the thing, I don't control it, but at least I control my action. I make the decision. It's something that I'm comfortable doing, so I move forward with it. Because
it's in the shadow, and we put it in the shadows because of how it makes us feel about ourselves, in my opinion. And so it's so scary, we avoid it. We avoid it. But it's like, I think the faster you can kind of build that muscle of like, I've got this hesitation. What is the real reason? Because like logically, I can do that whole thing. Cool. You have nothing to lose. You're poor. Great. Zero. Right. Okay. But then what is it that I do have something to lose? It's relational capital. It's status within my tiny micro community that doesn't matter, but like my perceived status. Okay. Name the names. But by pulling it out from the shadows, but like that confrontation from here to here is, I think, where all the fear is.
when it talks about perceived status, it makes me think of Instagram, because that's, it's like, okay, you're not fine with wherever you are in life right now, but the persona that you're putting online on Instagram, etc., you want to upload it, you want to uphold it, so you don't want to do things that will make people think differently about you, or do things that will show your failure public, so that you can maintain that little status that you have on social media or on Instagram. Like, who cares? People don't really give that much damn about what you do with your life, really.
Where all the fear is, because it's embarrassing to be like, it's my mom.
The other perfect thing, or great realization, I think, for anybody that's starting out and is feeling self-conscious about what other people are going to think, is when you're starting out, by design, there are so few people looking at you that even if you do fail, no one fucking sees, right? So this is something we realized when we were running nightclubs, that we would try and launch a new event around Freshers Week in September, and we would have this great idea, and everything would be about flamingos, or it would be a smart night on a Tuesday, so people could go out after they've been to sports club or whatever it was, and then it would flop, right? And we'd do 150 people, and all of the guys that work for us would be stood outside looking destitute and upset, and they'd go, oh, it's so embarrassing.
The tables there so it looks like there's more room.
Oh, dude, we had so many tricks. We'd pump the room full of smoke. We would pad the back off so that everyone had to go to the front. We'd get the DJ to play music, all sorts of shit. But all of the boys would be like, fuck, this makes us look so bad. Everyone's going to think that we're shit. I was like, no. 150 people are going to think that we're shit. Yeah. Like, the advantage of running a shit business that doesn't reach many people is that not many people saw your shit business. And that's when you're starting out. People that are concerned about becoming a content creator. I'm worried about starting a podcast because what if everyone sees how shit my podcast is? It's like, dude, no one's going to see your shit podcast. It took me 3.5 years to get even an appreciable amount of people listening to this show. And it was effort 3 times a week. No one cares when you start. So you can be liberated from that as well. And it's just objection handling all the way down.
That's what I was saying, man. It's like, when you start something new, you're not gonna be great at it. So you shouldn't expect yourself to, come up with something that is gonna blow people's mind, etc. And on top of that, when you start, like, okay, for example, you start a business, right? Who knows about your business? What are you gonna sell to? Probably you will have like 1 or 2 customers. Those are your chances to learn things from those things. You will get 1 customer, you do things, you may mess up, cool. You refine that and do it better on the next one. And as you're moving forward, as you are growing, you will see that audience will accumulate based on the values that you bring, not based on at the beginning, because at the beginning it's gonna suck. If you go back on this channel, go back to the first video, it's shitty, right? As the video is getting better, as I keep producing, as I keep, making stuff, people are not seeing, refining the idea, making it better, and then trying different stuff. It gets better. I get better, right? And then when you're watching the video, you get better values, which gets you to stick around. So the idea is just like, when you're starting, there are not many people that are watching you. So just get to the work. Always think about, okay, I'm here, I'm trying to grow, and then I'm going to do it one step at a time. And it's going to take time, and I'm going to submit myself to that time. And whatever happens in between that space, I don't really care. I don't really care what people think about it. I just care about the growth, and then the percentage that I'm gaining every single day, and then the value that I'm producing, in a sense.
I think a couple frames that are just different frames around content making, since we're on the topic, that helped me was, one is seeing it as practice rather than the game. So like when we're doing a podcast, if you start, you're like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to post it. It's practice for me getting better for future me, rather than like, this is the main game. It's like, no, the game is the whole thing. And this is just like, we're still in preseason.
Yep.
Like these scores, these touchdowns don't even matter yet. Right now, you can say yet, even though like I can still feel like I'm in preseason, but I think from a mental framework, it actually decreases the stakes associated with doing it. And I think that's been helpful for me, especially it was in the earlier days. The other one was kind of the equal opposite of this problem, which is not wanting to start because no one's watching, because it feels like you're doing all this work. What's the point? And so the little mental trick that I had was One, I track lots of stuff. And the more ways you track, the more ways you can win. And so that's a little thing that I found out. So like if you track 100 stats, then you only need one of them to go up so you feel like you made some progress. So that's like an easy one. And the second thing around the tracking is that I would look at like the biggest possible number. So a lot of times you can see like the impressions of, you know, a post that you make. Even if you only got like 16 likes, I got like 100 impressions. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, if there was a room of 100 people, I'd be stoked. Like that would be awesome. Especially in the early days, I was like, I would totally feel like that was worthwhile. And so taking those little impression numbers and pretending that they were like micro events that I was making the work or the content for, all of a sudden made it feel worth it for me. And so the combination of I can have a small room and I'm really impacting, like when I get a view that has like 13 views on it, you know, for like a video in the early days, I'd be like, well, shoot, I made this video and 13 people saw it was like a small room. Like that works. But looking at both absolute growth and relative growth. So it's like, okay, well, I went from 10 followers this month to 15 followers this month. It's like, well, you can say that you only gained 5 followers. I was like, or you can say that you went up by 50%. And that was exciting. And so then because I'm a Excel projection guy, I was like, okay, well, if I do this every month, and the team knows this because I project everything out. I'm like, if we do this, because I'll predict where we're going to be in like 12 months, and we usually hit it. Very.
Really?
Very.
But how do you account for the unforeseen 5 million play video that comes in?
Well, that's my padding.
Right.
So
okay.
I'll project out with no white swan events.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Where something good happens.
Yep.
But just if we keep doing what we're currently doing at this trajectory, we compound at 13% a month.
Yep.
That's what it is right now. So 13% monthly, and that's just on one of the platforms we're on. And so I can just see what we're going to be at 6 months. And that's exciting.
So James Smith gamifies it in the same way. You know,
does he?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly the same way. And he always says that it's just like playing levels on a computer game. Yeah. And this month, wow, like I got another XP point or whatever. And I think that's very important because social media and the fact that it is associated with status, even though everybody says, oh, you know, it doesn't really matter and blah, blah, it does. Like it's very hard for us to remove the human hierarchy from what is evidently just quantified fucking status, right? On a screen. And what he did was he removed himself a lot existentially from that by saying, it's not a comment on my worth as a person. It's not a comment on whether I'm, you know, going to be loved or accepted by the world. It's me putting some stuff out. And wow, we won this month. Yeah. And this month, oh, maybe we didn't win. Why didn't we win? Or I'll go back. The same way as if someone beats you at FIFA, unless you're like a pro FIFA player or whatever. But again, with that, what's the difference between the amateur FIFA player and the pro FIFA player? The pro has put his existential connection to his content and the success of it.
There's so many little things.
Okay, there's like a quick stuff because they're talking about social media. And I mean, doing it for like, I think that's the second year, going into the second year, it becomes more like a game because when I'm doing those stuff, it's like I'm just putting stuff out. Those are things that I value, and then I'm just gonna create content around it. All I want is just to create a community and share a message that I think is important. That's pretty much it. You know what I mean? So as long as I'm producing, and even if I produce something and then it doesn't get any traction, that's gonna get any view or any likes, it doesn't do much because it's just me going back to the board like, okay, what happened? What did we do that didn't work, and what did we do that worked? And then what was the plan moving forward, and how can we keep on doing that? Because it's fun. It's like when you look at the world, like the internet has become part of the world, and you can carve your own space in that real estate of the internet, where like, this is my part. This is where I share things that I value, and I connect with people that are like-minded, you know, and I kind of like own this little space, right? So putting content that you care about, not really caring that much about the likes, following the growth. The little growth is, as you know, it gives you that boost to like, okay, I'll keep doing it. And then over time, the more I do, the better it gets, the better value it gets. And then the more the audience is going to grow, the people are going to grow, the business is going to grow, and whatever else that comes behind it. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. Those videos, they got values. That's why we're sharing them.
So many little things on this that I want to go into. One of them is that, so Dr. Cashy's my closest friend. He's like a behavioral, whatever, loves studying why humans do things. And so people who are most successful, a lot of times it's not that they necessarily have more willpower. They find other ways to reward themselves. And so he's like, the more skills you have, the more ways you have to reward yourself. And so somebody can extend how long their time horizon is because they do gamify it. So people who don't have the skills of figuring out ways to reward themselves in the meantime can't make it the whole way. But that's like when you're doing cardio and you're like, okay, it's 5 times 5 to get out of here, right? You create micro games within the longer game to keep yourself going. And the thing is, I've seen that across verticals. So like if you look at, so Travis Mash is a Olympic lifting coach out of North Carolina. And he has this really cool way of getting lifters to PR every workout, to have a personal record every workout. And what he does is he have them map every single set and rep range for every single lift at every weight. And so what happens is all you have to do is go through your book of 200 lifts and every single weight, and you can always find one that you did a year ago. And
oh my God, this is my 8 rep max PB on good mornings.
Yes. And you're like, well, I can hit 9 on this, or I can add 5 pounds to it. And so every workout they win.
Yeah.
And so they get excited because they get rewarded every workout. And so that's why it's like the more ways you track, the more ways you can win. And then I think that's those little micro wins can keep you going over the long game that you have to just keep playing.
One of the other associated tweets that you did was, if your life sucks, the easiest thing is to change your environment.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that I saw moving from a very good life in the UK to now as excellent of a life as I can imagine in Austin. Mm-hmm. And I'd met about 1 million people throughout my time as a club promoter and had a handful of friends. I was like, fuck, like I feel like my people met to friend conversion should be higher than this. I feel like the funnel is very wide and like the conversions are very low, to use your terminology.
Yeah.
And then moved out to Austin, and it's like I have more friends than people I've met, which is just fucking insane. So definitely changing your environment. What other ways, given that not everybody could move to Austin, what other ways would you say, if your life sucks, the easiest thing is to change your environment? What other ways could someone do that?
I mean, the environment is, like, this is I'm going to tangent and I'm going to come back. So if you've ever heard somebody say like, man, I hate Cincinnati. Cincinnati sucks, right? Or they go some city and like they go there for 2 days and they make a judgment across the entire city, right? But it's like, okay, let's go really deep. You ate at 3 restaurants and you saw 7 total people in Cincinnati. Does Cincinnati suck, or do the 2 restaurants that you went to or the 7 people that you were with are they not that cool? Well, it's so easy to just move like 2 miles down the street. It's the same reason people do staycations. It's like you don't even need to change cities. You can be in the same city and still change the environment. Like just moving out of your mom's basement, you know what I mean? And just going into another place with 4 guys can change the environment. And so like that's the thing that to me was so telling on this was, so heroin addiction, super addicting, I'll put it that way. And when a bunch of soldiers came back from Vietnam, they had been addicted. I don't know if you've heard of this, right? 25% of soldiers who went to Vietnam tried heroin. It was like an insane statistic. And in the US, 90% of heroin addicts who go to clinics relapse. So they have a 10% long-term success rate. Tough. The stats are completely reversed from people who got addicted or did heroin in Vietnam and then came back to the US, which then you could draw the line, which is, it's better to change your environment than to even do anything else, because what happens is you eliminate all the triggers and cues that are associated with the habit that you're trying to.
This is straight out of the book Atomic Habit. What is it called? There's a name for this shit. How do they call it? I don't think it's analog. The analogy and analogies that it made about the U.S. soldier that got addicted to cocaine in Vietnam, and then coming back because of the change in their environment, they got better. You find that directly in the book Atomic Habit, which in the book they talk about how your environment plays big part in your habit, because the environment, the people around you, how things are structured, in those environments you get cues that will make you do certain habits, or depending on everything around you, right? If you are trying to stay off the sugar diet, but on your kitchen counters, there's cookies. There's a high chance that when you pass by that cookie, you will grab it. But if you do a switch in your environment, you take off that cookie basket and then you put fruit on the counter. Whenever you walk in that kitchen, instead of grabbing cookie, you're probably going to grab fruit as a snack, which your environment plays a big role in the things that you do. So the idea here is just to structure your environment in ways that it makes you productive rather than in ways that it makes you get addicted to bad habits. Which is a recommended book, Atomic Habit. Link in the description. Just click on it. You can get the book on Amazon. I don't think it's that expensive, but it is a good book. Personally, it has changed a lot of things for me. It has improved the way I do things way better. Like my shift in terms of like fitness and gym all come from this book, because just understanding that, okay, I can create little cues that help me stick to something for a long run and help me not think too much when I'm trying to do something. Like when I'm going to the gym, I don't even think about the thing I'm doing in the gym, because I already predetermined everything that I need to do in the gym. I know that Monday, Wednesday is chest, is upper body. Tuesday, Thursday is lower body. Friday, Saturday, it's abs. Sunday off. And then, in the gym, I got like, okay, I go to certain area and I don't go to certain area. So it's just like, okay, boom, 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 boom. At this time, I go to the gym. At this time, I'm out. On a day-to-day basis, it's just become easy over time. And then now the growth is going to come with time, right? The environment, the people around you, and then the things that you kind of like just, structure. Or for example, one of the rules is like, okay, we do 30 push-up whenever we go to the restroom, or whenever I go to the restroom, I do 30 push-ups. It's like, okay, I associate going to the restroom with doing 30 push-ups, which every time I go to the restroom, I do 30 push-ups. And over a month, 3 months, a year, you will see a change in my physical body, and you're going to ask me, what did you do? What workout program do you follow? Which I just follow a basic routine, a basic habit that I kind of like trick my mind in doing. So whenever I go to the restroom, it is associated to doing push-ups. So I hit my push-up in there, and then it's recurrent. Environment, structuring it and making it, and putting good cues instead of putting the bad cues. Atomic Habit, man. Read that book.
Absolutely concerned that there was going to be an epidemic.
Destroy.
You see that the American government was absolutely concerned that there was going to be an epidemic.
Yeah.
They were adamant that all of these soldiers were going to come home, and it were going to be these veterans that were all addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
Wild.
And there are, for sure, but so much proportion less than their quote should be.
Yep.
Because the problem with the current system and like, for anyone who's listening, you can still extrapolate the principle or the concept. People are in the environment that they are addicted. They change environments and they go to a clinic. They change the environment, they change their behavior. And then they go back to the same environment and their behavior changes yet again to match the environment. And so it's like, if you want to change your actions, the easiest thing you can do is just change the environment. Because if you can do that, a lot of times, a lot of the negative things you have, you just don't get triggered. You don't get the cue for the behavior. It just gets extinguished.
So the way that I've worked this into my home working setup is I think I have 6 or 7 different places that I can work at.
Yeah.
And I do different tasks at each one of them. So I've got a place I'm writing a book. I've got a place that I write my book. That's first thing in the morning. Yeah. I've got a place that I do my emails at. That's a recumbent desk bike, which is fucking unbelievable, dude. Zone 2, 180 minutes a week of Zone 2 cardio, 180 minutes a week of emails with Zone 2 cardio. The place outside, I've got my studio, I record inside. We've got 2 living rooms with different houses that I can go into. And I'm like, different spots for each one. And if I'm in this vibe, I'm over here. And if everything's a bit, go for a walk, come back, move somewhere else. I'm like, now I'm in a different mode.
Totally. And I'm actually, so it works in the equal opposite too. It's if you want to start something, right? So like what we were talking about was extinguishing bad habits by changing the environment, by eliminating the cue. But on the flip side, if you want to start a habit, like for me, one of my quote famous ones is like, I want to put sunscreen on. It's like this time, it's like one habit that's like 80-20.
Why do you need to put sunscreen on so much?
Because, not so much. If you do like, it's like kind of like walking. Like if you just walk once a day, and if everyone just did that, like you add 10 years to everyone's life. It's like, what are the few things? It's like baby aspirin, walk. Like if you do that, crushing it. From a like skin cancer prevention, A, and then B, just like less wrinkled Alex future. suntan lotion or SPF stuff is like the 80-20 of that, right? Instead of having a zillion other things. So it's like, okay, I don't like it. I realize the reason I don't like it is I don't like oil on my hands. It sounds so stupid, but like that's enough punishment for me doing it that I stopped doing it. And so I had to overcome two things. One was that I hate the oil on my hands, and the second is that I don't remember. So I put one thing of sunscreen at each of my watering holes. So I get cued because I see it as soon as I sit down. So I eat lunch at the same table, I work at the same table, and I'm on my nightstand. Those are the three places that I spend my time. And so I have one in each of the three places. And then the type of sunscreen I have is that I have one that's dispensed through a thing, so I don't actually have to touch it. So it's like, do I know why? It's like, if you can identify why you don't like doing something, then you can isolate, why am I being punished for this behavior, and think, okay, is there a way I can fix it? And the other is, how can I cue myself on a more regular basis by changing my environment rather than setting an alarm on my phone where if it goes off right now in the middle of a podcast, I'm not going to pull out suntan lotion, or I'd have to carry everything with me, which I would never do, right? That would punish me far more than just not putting it on to begin with. And so just thinking through both of those things, anyways, that has been really helpful for me in stopping behaviors that I don't want to do.
I don't know, man. Like, this book, Atomic Habit, is on a different level. I keep talking about it. It's like I'm addicted to the book, but it is a good book. Like, you can see, like, someone like Alex Hormozi is actively using the advice from the book to make his life better. Basically, what he's saying here about starting a new habit when, you're just starting, and then creating cues that can help you stick to that habit, is the idea that when we are starting something new, you want less friction between you and that action. It's like, if you have never been to the gym to the gym before, and this is your first time going to the gym, instead of you going to the gym for 2 hours and feeling sore and might not come the next day, why don't you show up to the gym for 5 minutes? Show up for 5 minutes 5 days a week. 5 minutes you go on a treadmill, or 5 minutes you do some little light cardio or the bicycle. Come back, keep coming back for like 2 weeks, then increase it to 15 minutes, then increase it, or make it in a way that, okay, my gym is on the way back from my work. So once I finish work, on my way home, I will just stop by the gym, do my 5-minute workout, do my 10-minute workout, and then drive home. By doing that, by repeating that action over and over again, it becomes very easy, because going to the gym is a normal stuff, because it is just on your way home. It doesn't take you that much to do it. 15 to 30 minutes, you can hit it. And if you do that after a year, you will see that unconsciously you will increase the time that you spend in the gym. It will go from 5 minutes to an hour, from an hour to an hour and 30, maybe 2 hours, depending on how much you want that fitness to be in your life. Because we can get all of the meal plan, the workout plan, but if we cannot show up consistently, if going to the gym doesn't become part of our identity, if there's too much friction between us and the action that we want to do, or the goals that we want to accomplish, we will never do it. So by understanding how habits are structured, how our brain view habits, and how it is wired, we can trick those things, like putting cues that will help us, that will help us take action toward new habit much easier, and then help us not take action toward bad habit, because we make those cues difficult. There's friction between me and my bad habit, and there's less friction between me and my good habit. Keep repeating. Check the book out, man. Like, I cannot say it enough. It's a book that I would always recommend to everybody.
Dressed as easy opportunities.
Starting and cueing myself to do new behaviors that I want to do, and then also stopping behaviors that I don't want to do.
Very nice. Most distractions come dressed as easy opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
This is interesting because as people begin to accumulate the success that they say that they want, this becomes an increasingly big problem.
Yeah. I think it was Andy Grove who said this. Probably Churchill.
Yes, there we are. Chalk another one up for Winston.
It might have been Packard. I think it might have actually been Hewlett Packard. It might have been one of those guys. He said that businesses die of indigestion, not starvation. And so they overeat, they're not starving. It's the entrepreneur that, and this is like, you get back to human behavior, which almost all roads lead back to it. But the entrepreneurs get reinforced for changing direction, because nothing worked. You change direction, something clicks. And so what happens is you learn a lesson from that. You're like, oh, so if I change direction, good things happen. But that's not the right lesson, which is one of my favorite things about entrepreneurship is making sure that we learn the right lesson from the instance or the circumstance. It's like I hired a sales guy, he did a bad job. All sales guys suck. Not the right lesson, right? But that's actually something that is pervasive in even the internet community of like lessons that they'll tell the story and then they'll say the lesson, but sometimes the lesson, all we know is the facts of what happened, not necessarily the thing you took from it. Anyways, I was making a point. Churchill, starvation,
easy opportunities.
So the higher up in business you get, the more attractive the opportunities that you have to learn to say no to. And this has been really hard for me because at every level, like I thought, great, I can check the box on distractions. I've learned to say no to $10,000 opportunities. But then when you're making $100,000, then you have to be able to say no to $100,000 opportunities. And the thing is I call it the woman in the red dress. But the woman in the red dress, have you heard this little analogy I have?
No.
Okay. So this is like one of my favorite analogies. So in the Matrix, Morpheus takes him through a training program to teach him one thing about agents. And so they're walking down the street and there's all these people going. And he says, were you listening to me or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? And he says, look again. He looks back and the woman in the red dress who walked by is an agent pointing a gun in his head. And I see distractions the same way, which is that the better you become, the more attractive the woman in the red dress is. And so you can say no to a 6, but what about a 7?
What about a 12?
Exactly. What about a hypothetical 1,000?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really what it becomes because there is no limit on the upside. And so that's why having like some of the soft stuff of like, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to do. And there's 100 other things I could do, but each of the cost of those things is the one thing that matters most. And I think that one of the things that Layla's been so good at helping me with, and I think a lot of my success earlier on was propelled by the fact that like when I met Layla, I had a chiropractor agency, I had a dental agency, I had 5 gym locations, I had a gym launch business where we did turnarounds. I had all of those things going on and there was no CEO besides me. I was CEO of all of them because I didn't understand how this stuff worked. And I also made I made money from all of them, but no income. Like everything was just enough to break even and it was 9 spinning plates. And it was because like I was so opportunistic and it's very classic new entrepreneur to just say yes to everything. And Warren Buffett said that the difference between really successful people and the most successful people, this is me paraphrasing, is that the most successful people say no to almost everything. And I've tried to take that because it's so hard. And I think that a lot of it's so simple and so hard, which a lot of success habits are, which is like, if you do the same thing for a very long period of time, I think this is Shane, I can't remember the name, but I'll say that. Yeah, it's Churchill again. He said, success comes down to doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time without convincing yourself you're smarter than you are. And I just love that quote.
Why do you not need to convince yourself that you're smarter than you are if you're doing the same thing?
I think it's because you think you can handle both. And so you're like, oh, I got this.
Oh, okay. Because if you did think that you were smarter than you are, you would then start to take on more stuff. So a quote from John Maxwell, which I absolutely adore, that says, you cannot overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. Which is just fucking perfect. And it's Greg McEwen's Essentialism is one of my top 5 books of all time. And it's for this precise reason that it's an antidote to the type A fallout. Yeah. Right? I can do it all. I will do it all. Watch me suffer and bear this burden. And you go like, look, you can do the hard work thing, right? You can do that. But the working hard and being spread thin are 2 different dynamics. And one of the like interesting idea I've been playing around with a little bit recently is periodizing work. Mm-hmm. So in the same way as your weightlifting coach will have the guys doing his sub-max for 90 days, he is building up for 90 days, he is comp prep, he is blah, 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 whatever it is, mobility. That's a much easier way to blend what we're talking about here as maybe a little bit earlier. I think you need to specialize more as you get bigger and bigger because the distractions are going to be even greater.
How so?
So if you are the CEO of your company and then someone comes in with, you've got so much more downstream from you that if you get distracted, the repercussions, the ramifications of becoming distracted are magnified even more. What do you think about that? Do you agree?
I think the specialist piece is the piece that threw me because I always feel like the higher up you go, the more generalist you become.
in terms of skill set, but not in terms of projects or in terms of projects.
Specialized in projects, generalized in skills.
That we have tiny impulses.
Yeah. I think it's exactly what we were talking about earlier. It's like, if you like, I got there's a tweet that I made. Actually, you were the one who made it go viral, right? Which was
when you quoted me quoting you to David Goggins. It's just this endless human centipede of fucking Hormozi quotes.
It was
going
really
around the
Churchill
internet.
who said it first.
It was Churchill. Thank you.
But it's like you don't build confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by stacking.
Having an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are.
Thank you. That's
outwork your self-doubt.
Thank you. There.
Yeah. I'll quote you to you, which is a new low thing.
So that, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, no, but what if you don't have any successes? Like, how do you get started? And I still think that the quote is 100% valid. It's that they don't realize the validity of the smaller things that they have done up to that point. And so it's being able to transfer your successes of like, okay, like, did you get dressed this morning? Like, did you get in front of the computer? Like, you have evidence, it's smaller evidence, but you have enough evidence to make the claim that you can do this. And then you do that enough times that you have enough evidence to make a claim that you can do this and support it. And I think that's where the big outcomes come from, lots of constrained tiny impulses of saying like, you know what, I'm going to get this tiny victory and I know how to say no to that. I know to say no to heroin today or whatever.
Yep.
That would be a hard one, you know.
Larger impulse, yeah.
Probably larger. But that's the idea, is just stacking as many of those pieces of evidence that give you proof that you are who you say you are, that you have done what you say you can do.
Yeah, it's the challenge of action or belief first is something that I've been playing around with so much. And my friend James, he wrote a book, The C Word, like confidence. It was a book about how to be confident, right? And I do feel like a big footnote summary could have been that quote from you.
Proof.
And the problem is, this is something that I've seen as well. A good example coming from a world where I was successful in business before I was successful personally. I have a skill set now, and my capacity within this particular skill set and the performance of what that does are intrinsically linked, right? There's almost a linear relationship. As I become better at networking with guests, with recording, with doing all of the other things, the show increases. When I ran a business, there were so many degrees of freedom between my inputs to the business and the success of the business that someone with like malignant imposter syndrome could always explain away how things had gone well. So I would say, oh, it's because we timed the market right. Oh, it was because of like this member of staff that we brought in. I mean, I trained him, but really he would have been great without me or whatever. And self-doubt can sort of wheedle its way in very sort of nefarious ways when you do that. Then switching to something where you have a relatively undeniable stack of proof, even undeniable to the part of you that wants to deny proof, right? Which is that imposter syndrome. After a little while, it's just a crushing weight that I call it imposter adaptation. So, you know, if you continue to disprove your imposter syndrome in the real world and it persists, you have to admit to yourself that it's got nothing to do with your capabilities and everything to do with your addiction to feeling like an imposter. This is just a trend of how you think about the world. You're looking for you have competence without confidence, which is a lack of belief, and confidence without competence is self-delusion, right? So you need to have this balance between the two. But people, when they say, well, surely self-belief becomes before action, I'm like, well, not particularly. Not if that's not your nature. I don't think, like, you're asking for delusion there. And it is significantly easier for you to think, I am a fitness person if you just went to the gym and did 10 push-ups, than I am a fitness person when I go to the gym tomorrow and do 10 push-ups. Like, where's the, show me, spit and sawdust. Where's the fucking reality of this? You know?
I agree.
Affirmation. Personally, it's something that I struggle with a little bit because I don't personally use affirmation that much, to be honest. I'm more of someone who really self-doubt himself a lot and then question a lot of the stuff that I do in terms of like competency, etc. For example, like a good example is like the marathon. I've been running for I think 4 to 5 years, you know, consistently as much as possible. But until last year, I wouldn't consider myself a runner, because in my head it's like, no, I'm not good. I'm not as good as anybody else. And I think anybody can run better than me. And that kept bugging me, because I was doing all of those run, couple 100 miles every year, etc., and being as consistent as possible. But every time I run, or every time I run with someone, I feel like, no, I'm not there yet, right? I had the idea of wanting to do a marathon, but I was doubting myself. In my head, it's like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm able to sustain the struggle of those 4 hours of 6 hour run, whatever that is, those 26 miles. And until I started to stack those proof for myself, that's when I started to believe in myself, being able to do it more. Even until the morning of the race, I was still doubting myself. Even at 20 miles within the run, I was still doubting myself, because, but I just kept building those undeniable proof. At the beginning, it was like, okay, I wanted to run a marathon. I'm going to run a marathon. But I want to run a marathon, but I'm not sure if I can do it. The only way for me to prove to myself that I can do it is that I prepare for it, where, I train, meaning I got to show up every single day to like do the training, follow a specific training, and then keep running until I am ready. And then I got like 2 months to prepare for the race. So I just kept putting in the training, like putting in the work. So once I show up, I can see, okay, this week we did like 6 miles usually my long run are on Sundays. So this week we did like six miles. Oh, next week we are doing 12. Oh, I don't know if I'm ready. Then I did 12. Then, okay. Oh, this week we are doing 14. Then, oh, we're doing 16. I've never done 16 before. Oh, we're doing 20. I would go train by myself on a Sunday, go for a run, 2-3 hours run by myself, and I ended up doing 20 miles. By doing those 20 miles, this is a proof that, I think I can do this thing, man. Like, I'm getting better, I can do it. And then that's just my way to affirming to myself, and, telling the part of me that is self-doubting me that, no, you're wrong, that I can do this shit. And then, by stacking those beliefs, by doing those things, and, getting those tiny wins. It's like, okay, I started running. My first 2 miles was hell. Like, I felt like I was going to throw up. I didn't want to go out to run anymore. The couple of months after that, it was hard to like put on the shoes. I was scared of going to run. But just me proving that, okay, I can do this thing every day, the day after, every week, every year. I built that proof that if now you're asking me, like, okay, I'll tell you that I'm proud. I'm a runner. Like, this is what I do, right? And then I enjoy it. So, yeah, he's right on that one. Man.
Who here before pledging started was like, I want to be a part of this house? The guys are like, me. Okay. I'm like, okay, got it. Who here thought it was going to be easy? I'm like, who here thought it would be hard? They raised their hands. I'm like, guys, this is what hard feels like. And all of a sudden, there's just like this big exhale in the room. They're like, expectations get reset. This is normal. You wanted this thing. You expected it to be hard. Reality now matches conditions. Sorry, expectations now match conditions. This is what hard feels like. And then all of a sudden, it's like they got permission to feel shitty. And by getting permission to feel shitty, they stop feeling shitty because they're like, this is just my new world. And so then, you're like, listen, you give 8 weeks, you're going to get 3.5 years. Other people are going to drive you around late at night. Other people are going to clean after you. Like, it's a good investment, right? And that it was a good deal. Like, you give 1 semester and you get the rest of them to just do whatever you want. But that concept, like that quote on both of those, came from that experience of having someone tell me, this is what hard feels like.
This is where most people stop, and this is why they don't win, is also another beautiful bit of motivation. And given that I spent a little bit of time with Goggins and Cam Haines, two guys, I was telling you about this before, you said it must be nice as we walked in. So Cameron Haines, bow hunter extraordinaire, lives in Oregon, and he has behind the power rack in his garage where he lifts, he has must be nice written. And I was like, why have you got that put up on there? And he was like, it's because everyone says, must be nice to be you, Cam. Must be nice to be sponsored by Hoyt and all of these like top level bow things and go on Rogan. He was, there was a video that went super viral of Goggins losing his shit after John Jones won last weekend. And the guy that he's hugging is Cam. So it's like, it must be nice for you to be backstage at UFC. It must be nice for this. And I've seen what that guy does. And that guy picks up a rock that weighs about 80 pounds. Yeah. And it's got the word poser written on the front of it because people call him a poser. Yeah. And he carries it up a hill that is maybe like 1,000 foot of elevation, 1.5 miles high, with no fanfare at the end, no finish line, doesn't post it on social media unless the team's there filming it with someone else, and then carries it back down, puts it in the boot of his Raptor, drives away. And he just does that because he needs to remind himself that he's doing the stuff that is hard. And this is where most people stop, and this is why they don't win, combined with this is what hard feels like, justifies things being hard. Now, I do worry, and I find this in myself sometimes as well, that you can be so good at dealing with suffering that you can actually push yourself a little bit too far. And you go, I'm starting to bear more burden than I can basically take on. And the art of not burning out is something that I think a lot of people, if this resonates with you, the art of not burning out is something that you really, really need to be able to feel. And like realizing what happens when you just start to glance off the bottom side of it and go, okay, like I'm just going to ease off the gas a little. I need to take this afternoon to go sauna and get some sunshine and chill out and get some food, and then I can put my foot back on maybe a little bit tomorrow and we'll temper it. But it justifies the fact that I use this stat all the time. 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3, and of the 90%, the 10% that do, 90% don't make it past episode 20. So by making 21 podcasts, you were in the top percentile of all podcasters ever in history. That's what hard feels like. And that's not even hard. It's just consistent. Fuck me. It's less than half a year.
Yeah.
Insane.
I hear stats like that and I just think, man, it is so easy to win. Like that. I mean, like when I hear that, that's exactly what I think. I'm just like, man, for everyone who's like struggling to win, it's like most of the pain that people experience is purely in their own minds. And so to your point, I think there's an interesting one between like burnout versus hard. And so like for me, burnout is when I would define it as my output per unit of time decreases. So I can see that that's measurable, right? Now, like I can say like number of pages that I edit or the quality of the content that I create, like my output per time, like the team knows when I'm like 6 hours, 7 hours into recording something, they're like, I literally start like slumping. You're like physically, I just start like slumping and I like my cadence isn't as like, I'm just not as sharp, right? There's that versus emotional burnout, which I think people mislabel as burnout when really it's just like they don't know how to reframe reality. And so
okay, before we go to burnout, which I think is transitioning into, what I want to talk about is a part that they say this is what hard feel like. I think my take on this is just that it's not supposed to be easy. So when it feels hard, it means that you are doing something right, at least. It's just a reminder that maybe I'm on the right path. That's why it feels hard. Because if the thing that you want and pretty much is what everybody else wants, you know, if it's easy, everybody else would have got it, right? Probably it's the same thing that you want, I don't know, the financial freedom, the fame, whatever is it that you want, someone else wants that as well. And not everybody gets it, right? The reason is it's because it's hard, it's not easy. So when you're doing those things and then it feels hard, it feels tough, it feels challenging, it feels draining, it means that you are at least on the right path. So just don't stop, keep going. We talk about David Goggins and then Cameron Hayes. Those are two people that do hard shit, man. Like the thing that this motherfucker does, this motherfucker does, it's crazy, man. Like Cameron Hayes, I think it just like, I don't know, he does like 100 miles training by himself, not for like a race or anything, but he just goes on those 100 miles by himself or with his son, and it's nuts, bro. Like 100-mile run, right? Goggins, same thing, like those marathons, those races, the SEALs and all those kind of stuff. When you listen to this kind of people, you realize that their mindset is on a different level. What means hard for them is on a different level. The mental toughness and tenacity and resilience that they have is on a different level. So even if you can adopt, 10 to 15% of what they have and then put it into the goals that you are chasing or the things that you're chasing, I think it really does help, because when it gets hard, you know that, okay, that's normal. That's what it's supposed to feel like. It means that I'm growing. It means that at least something is going right. At least I'm on the right path because it's hard. Because if it was supposed to be easy, everybody would have got what I wanted. So, yep, that's just my take on it.
What it really is they got a comment on a post that bugged them. And like, again, it's like pulling it from the shadows. It's like, no, this stuff doesn't work. It's like, hold on. What's the one voice that actually is coming through? What is the real thing? Well, there was this comment. Okay, great. It's embarrassing to even have to say that. But when you say it, then you admit it, and all of a sudden you put it in the light, and the shame kind of starts to evaporate. Because then you can name it and be like, is this comment bigger than my future? Is this comment bigger than me? And one of the things that that has helped me was saying, like, what's true about this? We confront it and say, like, what if they're right? Now what? Because I think a lot of effort gets put into trying to deny reality, right? Like, there's this clip that I shared from Tom Bilyeu, and he was talking about how he gets made fun of for his ears being big, right? And I think it's a really good clip, because his point that he was making, because it's such a visual, easy example for people to understand. He's like, is that it's true. I do have big ears. And so that's like if they're like, you have no right to be making content. Are they right? Okay. And
yeah,
I'm still going to do it anyways. Because the thing is, like, one of the things that I had earlier on in my career was like, I didn't think I was a really good person. Like, I was like, I'm not a good person.
Yeah,
like some people are like, yeah, I just had that, right? And I had a history, whatever. And one of the things that gave me a lot of respite or relief from that kind of thought process was like, that's okay, because I can still do the things that create success and not deserve it and still get it. And that actually felt very powerful for me, because it was like, I don't have to deserve the success. I can still just do the stuff that gets it. It's like, you don't have to deserve the girl, but you can still do the things that get her. And do you deserve her when you have her? I don't know. Who knows? I hate the word deserve to begin with, right?
Yes.
But like that concept, because also I could segue into like gratitude around, like, if you think you deserve it, then you don't enjoy it. But that has been super powerful for me, which is like, what if they're right? And because a lot of people are just they spend so much effort trying to fight the fact that the comments might be right. This might have been a fucking terrible thumbnail.
Yep.
You know what? This might have been a boring video. This post might have been regurgitated content. This post might have been inspired too closely by someone else's post, right? What if they're right? And does it make me a piece of shit? What if it does? And
you end up getting down to base, which is pretty much nothing. Like,
right.
All that there is actions. All that there is what you're going to do in response to this.
Yeah.
You know what, another brilliant addition to this that you kind of mentioned, which is the fact that this is what hard feels like. Yeah. Most people get to this stage and they decide to stop. And now the bar is set so low. Yeah. Goggins said this in the episode with me, and it gave me chills when he said it. He was like, it's so easy to be successful nowadays because people are weak.
Yeah.
Everybody's weak. Dana White says it as well.
Yeah.
I tell my kids, it is so easy. If you are even a weekend savage, you will run these kids over. Yeah. And for every single person, it's giving me chills again. For every single person that likes to castigate the very padded victimhood mentality of the modern world, okay, cool. Like you can rail against people that say that the world is against them, even though it's not, and et cetera, et cetera. How does that inform the way that you should operate in the world?
Right.
Well, okay. What you're saying is everybody else is fallible, weak, fragile in some way or another. Yeah. How does that inform the way that you act? The way that you should act is, holy shit, if I have even a modicum of resilience, this makes the market environment for me so much easier. Whether I want to get the girl, buy the house, become successful in whatever domain I choose to, the bar is set so low.
Yeah. this, if we're going tweets, this segues into one of my favorite ones, which is, you stay in poverty until you learn the first lesson of poverty, which is 2 words, my fault. And so when I was younger, I was really angry at my parents, like many people are, right? Justified or not, doesn't really matter. I was very angry and I blamed them for the woes of my life. And I realized when I was 19 that these people that I hated, I was giving all the power over the fact that I wasn't the person I wanted to be. And I was like, well, it's their fault. And the idea that I had actually given these people that I hated power over my success was ultimately something that made me feel sick to my stomach and was what allowed me to point the finger of blame inwards and say my fault, and then at least take ownership over the fact that sure, maybe your dad didn't hug you enough, or maybe your mom wasn't present, or whatever it is, right? It's like, and like, I said this the other day, and it'll probably piss off a lot of your audience, so, we can put our soft earphones on. If you suffered from racial inequality, if you suffered from gender inequality, if you suffered from being born in Bangladesh, if you were sexually abused your entire life, you would be completely justified in the fact that you are not achieving the things that other people who didn't have those disadvantages have achieved. And I say this as a white guy who was born in America to a doctor father. I understand that. But to the same degree, you have the opportunity that Chris nor I have, which is that you can be an inspiration to people who went through the same thing and succeeded, despite those circumstances. Because I can promise that there is somebody who has had it worse and has done it better. And I think that one single point of proof, and there's a global point of proof that you can look for sure, but you can be that very local point of proof in your community or sub-community. And I think as soon as we shed that, that's I'm a big fan of power follows the blame finger. So wherever you point the blame finger is where the power follows. And so it's if you point it at the government has the power. If you point it at your spouse and say it's their fault that I'm not in shape, it's their fault, they never let me do anything, it's well, you're giving them all the power. And so it's until you're it's my fault, it also becomes my responsibility. What is?
What if it's not your fault?
It doesn't matter. And I can't run marathons because I lost my leg at birth. And either you can just never try, or you put the metal thing on and you do it anyways.
So this is one of the themes that I'm very interested in to do with your work in general. And it's one of the reasons why it bridges the gap from what we're going through, which are, some really lovely philosophical insights and all of the rest of it. Yeah. The difference is you seem to have a knack to be able to drag yourself out of the philosophy and get yourself into action. There's not too much mental masturbation that goes on. So let's say that there's someone who's listening to this podcast, thousands of people that are listening who are that person.
Millions.
Thousands of people that are that person. Yeah. There'll be a lot of people that are listening. Don't worry. That person that goes, I love when I hear these aphorisms and things, and maybe it goes on the whiteboard that's on the front of my fridge for a couple of months. How does that person get from mental masturbation around it to action, that this impacts my life in a tangible way that actually makes a difference to me? Any of the things that we go through today.
All right. 2 things. One is knowing the input-output equation. The second is knowing what your fuel is going to be. So if you can't define the inputs and outputs that are going to get you what you want, then there's no way to start, right? Because you don't know what you're supposed to do. So you have to define it down to the most basic first actions. So it's if I want to start creating content, then it means I have to post something. If it means I have to start doing I always think in terms of business because that's what I'm in. But I'm either doing a cold reach out, I'm doing a cold call, cold email, cold DM, whatever that is. I have to make a piece of content. I have to post it. I have to make a podcast. I have to make a YouTube video. I have to make a short, whatever that is, make a blog post. I have to run an ad. Right? I have to run the ad. I have to press go. I have to spend the money, whatever it is, whatever that core initial action is.
Go to the gym, lift the weight, put the shoes on, get in the car.
Whatever the input is, you have to define what the input is that's going to get you the output you want. Now, once you know what that input output is, the next one is why aren't you doing it? Right? And so I think a lot of people are looking for something that is very hard to find. And then they attribute their lack of success or lack of action because they don't have passion or motivation, right? And I was the same way. And so the short story around this was that I watched all the TED Talks in college. Like that was like what I was like, I'm not watching YouTube, I'm watching TED Talks. And I was like, and then I realized, and then I heard the term mental masturbation and I was like, oh, that's definitely what I'm doing. I was like, my life hasn't changed at all. And then I got my job, so out of college, and I would read all the self-help books. I read like every night. That's all I did. I just read all these self-help books. And I found one of them that said, there are people who are wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And I remember hearing that word wantrepreneur, and I was like, it made me feel sad. I was like, I don't want to be fucking wantrepreneur. I was like, I'm not some bitch. Like, you know, but I was like, but what if they're right? I am a wantrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. I want to be one, and I'm not. And from that point, it took me 6 months to quit my job to actually decide to do the entrepreneurial thing. And there are many things that contributed to me being able to leave. And I think a lot of it's not like people are looking for one thing. It might be a big bag of whys, a lot of them, right? That add up together to be above your action threshold. And I think in the early days, people are looking for the big carrot. They want the big vision. They want the big passion, but they don't have it. But I'll give you the first rule of entrepreneurship that I've learned, which is use what you have. And a lot more people have pain. A lot more people have anger. A lot more people have shame. And if you can use that as your gas in the beginning, you'll eventually get to a point where you can get out of that loop and then find something that you are really passionate about. But if you can't tie your shoes, you can't lift the weight, you can't send the DM, then you have to start with whatever you have. And so for me, it was hatred of my current existence. I hated being a entrepreneur. I hated being a wannabe. I hated being one of those people who like talked about all the things they were going to do and didn't do anything. I hated living the life that my dad wanted me to live. I was his bitch. That's what it was. I was his bitch. I was living his dreams out, not mine. And that was, led to that other tweet, which was, sometimes your parents' dreams have to die in order for yours to live. And for me, I realized that the idea that my father had of me as his son, that image had to die in order for the image of myself that I wanted to be to live. Because I kept trying to quit my job and go be an entrepreneur. And every time I'd have the conversation, be like, come over, we'll talk about it, we'll have dinner, and he'd always talk me off the ledge. It was always over and over again.
Good salesman.
Yeah. Or great authoritarian. You don't need to persuade when you have compliance. And so everybody has that person, or it might actually be somebody who's talking you off the ledge, or it might just be a voice in your head. It doesn't really matter, because that voice in person that only happened once or twice probably keeps talking to you when you're at home. But the big thing for me when I decided to make the jump, and mind you, I was such a bitch about it that I had to drive across the country before I called him to tell him that I'd left.
Yeah, I remember that.
I didn't want to confront him, which he then flew off the handle about. But I just knew, and this is the Tony Robbins quote, but it's just when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And I think pain moves people far, far more effectively than pleasure does. Like the easy way to prove it is point a gun at someone's head and you have absolute compliance and they will do what they need to do, right? Automatically, just like that. Like death is the great motivator and the gun just reminds you. And so I think that if you can create the figurative gun to your head of the pain that you're experiencing, and then I'm a big fan of future casting out negative scenarios. So people are talking about positive visualization. I prefer negative visualization, which is, what if I keep doing what I'm currently doing for the next 10 years? What will my life look like then? That usually takes my current pain and then just magnifies it. And then that allows me to get my action threshold high enough that it goes over the edge so that I can take that first move. And so if you know what the inputs outputs are of what you need to do, the guy who has the little quote on his wall, and you figure out whatever fuel you've got, not the one you wish you had, but the one you've got, and you use that to do the first input, you've crossed the line. You're in the game.
I told a story.
I do not disagree with anything that you just said about the first step toward success, which is, use the pain of you not wanting to be where you are right now to get you to where you want to go. The pain is a tool that you can use as well, because depending on how you use it, right? Anger, feeling of disappointment, doubt, all of those things, all of the negative voice. Either you just keep it in your head and then it blow up at some point, or use it as fuel to push over hurdles and over pain, over challenges, right? I said in the last video that I don't disagree that we need to use our dark side to move forward. And I stand on that. Also, I just know that, as we are pushing, you don't want to be too deep in the dark. But, as you are getting better, you need to also aim for the positive value, which is goodness, good moral, doing good for other people, generosity, gratitude, etc. In my case, when it comes to anger and pain, I know that there are things that, in order for me to get to the point that I am to my current self, I know that a lot of the fuels that I used to burn was me not wanting to be who I was, right? It's not like, oh, there's something wrong with me, but I just felt like that version of me can be better, and it pissed me off to not be able to not take action and just stay in that position. So every time when I was in action, and when there was pain, when there was no result, when it was silent, etc., I use those fuel to keep moving forward, to keep pushing, right? And that's why running is like a big therapy for me, because every time it was hard for me to just become a good runner, right? And every time I hit the road, I feel pain. And the reminder to myself is just like, like those, those anger and those stuff. That's what I personally use to get to a point that I am at. But over time, that, okay, you burn that fuel enough, it's still there. But now we use the opposite side, which is, okay, doing goodness, sharing good message as well, and then having a different purpose, because every time you're doing something, you kind of like burn certain purpose, and then once you are done with that, you move on to the next one. I'm on my next phase right now, but just as a reminder that sometimes I need to like draw back on those dark stuff to push forward, like to get to where I want to go, which is, it's a good one, definitely.
I think you spoke about people that break the law in an attempt to make money. Uh-huh. And you said, we sacrifice the thing we want for the thing that's supposed to get it. So we sacrifice freedom for money in the hopes that the money will give us freedom.
Yeah.
Downstream from that, this is one of the best things that I learned for all of last year. And you created the framework and then I filled it in. So I talked about the tension between success and a desire to feel like we're enough. Mm-hmm. I think that this speaks to what you're on about here. Success is a strange thing. Presumably we want success because we think a more successful life will bring us more happiness, meaning and fulfillment. Here's the problem. We sacrifice the thing we want, happiness, for the thing which is supposed to get it, success. Yeah. Failure can make you miserable, but I'm not sure that success will make you happy. And if you end up with an equation, if you could imagine, like, we sacrifice happiness to achieve success in the pursuit of happiness, like if you just remove success from both sides of the equation, what are you left with? It's just happiness.
Equals happiness.
There are, we can't deny the fact that we're statesful beings, that we require external validation. We can't just, go and live in a cave and in peaceful bliss and all the rest of it. Like, there are things that we need to do, but I do feel like a lot of the time we overclock our lives with regards to success and the pursuits that we go through in an attempt to do this. And that we sacrifice the thing we want for the thing which is supposed to get it is like, I see that all the time. I always ask myself, am I overcomplicating this? Like, am I doing more than I need to do? Is there a simpler way to do this?
Mm-hmm. I think, I think this is actually a game theory thing. And you're familiar. Okay. So I can go on it or I can not if you want. Okay.
Bring it on.
Yeah. So, Simon Sinek popularized this, but you have finite and infinite games, right? Finite games where you have known players.
The next guest or the next interview is going to be Simon Sinek.
Agreed upon rules, and an outcome that wins the game, right? And then infinite game, you have known and unknown players, no rules, and the point of the game is to keep the game going. And what happens is that people apply finite rules to infinite games, and then they wonder why it's not working.
What's an example?
So a finite game would be like baseball. Know the players. At the end of the game, the person you tally up the ones with the most runs, and you win. And you can't hold the ball and run it around the bases. Like, there's rules of play. With an infinite game, the Vietnam War isn't a simple example that Simon Sinek gives, which is basically the U.S. lost the Vietnam War because they were applying a finite structure, which is we're going to win this war, and the Vietnamese people we're playing an infinite game structure, which is we're going to stay alive and keep fighting. And as long as someone is staying alive and keeping fighting, they will beat the person who's trying to end something. And so the infinite frame always conquers the finite. And the thing is that most of the games worth playing are infinite. And so if you were trying to get in shape, you don't win getting in shape. The point is to stay in shape for the rest of your life. You don't win at marriage. The point is to stay married. You don't win at business. The point is to stay in business and keep doing business. So the point of the game is to keep playing. And I think if the six, and I would imagine success, if you put all of those things together, it's an infinite game. And so the point of success is to do the things that make you successful. And so if you're doing the things that are making you successful, then you are by definition winning. And I think that for me, redefining what is a perfect day and living as many of those days in a row as I possibly can, to me, that's winning. And I obviously have a relatively contrarian worldview, but which is that like when we die, nothing happens. And, we know what it was like to die because we've all been dead before, which is before we were alive. But I don't think that what I will do will ultimately matter in 500 million years. And so that kind of eliminates a lot of the pressure for me around like the external outcome. Sure, I'm human. There are definitely motivators, but if I can just over time chip away at how much that weighs on the scale, and I can keep putting more and more coins on the other side towards the infinite game of like the point of the game is to keep playing. And like there are some things that I remind myself over and over again. It's like the point of the game is to keep playing. That's the point. That is the point, is to just keep playing.
The point of the game is to keep playing. I very much like that. What was that? You found out the three most common traits of highly successful people. Do you remember those?
Yeah, it was, it's so funny. A superiority complex. So the three most common traits of hyper successful.
Before we go on the three most common traits, let's talk about finite and infinite game. I think my take on that, having a finite game is like, okay, if I'm starting to do something, I have a time limit. I want it to be successful within 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. And playing an infinite game is like, okay, if you just put someone who is playing a game, like, okay, I want to make a business that is successful, but my deadline is 6 months, compared to someone who is like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the business I'm going into, and I'm going to try to get better every single day for the next 20 years. Which one is going to be more successful? The one who is putting everything in the business every single day for 20 years and optimizing and getting better, improving the business, or the one that tries the business for 6 months and is not seeing any result and then just stop. So that's how I see it. It's like, okay, if you are thinking long term, you are playing a game compared to someone who is thinking short term just because they are in it for the money or for the fame or for the validation. So if you are playing a long game, so yeah, if you're playing a long game, the idea for you is just to keep getting better every single day, because you are not expecting the result now. You are putting it on a long-term horizon, and you know that growth is going to come with time. It's going to compound. Everything that you're doing, everything that you're putting into it, you are playing the game. You enjoy playing the game. The game for you is getting better at this one thing. Keep getting better. However, someone who is playing a finite game, they are playing it for a specific result, right? Or 6 months, I need to make $10,000. In 6 months, that person doesn't even make $500. They quit, right? So that's how I'm saying.
Successful people that they looked at, and it was interesting because there's the influencer world wants to be like, you have to wake up at 5 or you have to do cold plunges or whatever the fuck, right? But the thing but there was actually very few that they all had in common. So number one was that they had a superiority complex. They thought they were better than other people and that they deserved more. The second is that they suffered from massive insecurity and feeling that they would never be enough. And third, they had impulse control. And so you've got this combination of people who are like, I want to do this big thing. So this big toward thing. And they've got this big away pain that's like, I'm never going to be enough. I always have to do more. And then they have impulse control that keeps them focused on the goal without seeing the woman in the red dress or getting pursued by her. And that like, so it's like shoot high, have a big thing that motivates, like have a big tiger behind you and stay on the path.
Have you ever heard Jordan Peterson talk about that study of starving rats in a tube with a spring attached to their tail?
No.
Fucking brilliant. This is what you're talking about. So starving rats are placed into a tube.
Yeah.
And they have a spring that is attached to their tail that can measure the force that they pull at, and that's a proxy for desire. Then they waft the smell of cheese in from the front of the tube, and the rat pulls, and they measure how hard they want to go. And you think these rats are starving, they would be pulling pretty hard. Then they do another iteration of the study. This time they waft the smell of cheese in from the front, but they waft the smell of a cat in from behind. And the rats pull harder.
Yeah.
And what's the lesson? That you not only need to run towards something that you want, but you need to run away from something that you fear.
Yeah.
Now the problem, and this is, I like superiority complex, crippling insecurity, impulse control. Right?
Yeah.
I like that. The problem is, the people who we admire the most, due to the most success in the real world, don't necessarily have the most admirable internal states. That, to me, isn't necessarily the most peaceful, blissful way to live your life. Mm-hmm. What does it say that, especially in the modern world, we revere the people who have external accolades of success, and yet the three most common traits of these super successful people lead from a place which is almost objectively
miserable,
unadmirable.
Right.
Yeah. How do we square this circle?
I think it's just, what are we solving for? So, a lot of people, I loved watching Last Dance, which is Michael Jordan's, mini docuseries.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I think most people could see him there and be like, I don't know if I really envy this guy's life. Like, he still seems like pretty upset despite being a billionaire, despite all these other things. And so I think that if, like, what are we solving for? Like, my closest friend, Dr. Kashi, he has a statement because he coached Olympic teams. And he was like, champions are broken. I was like, huh. He's like, people look at champions and try and find something that champion has that they don't have. And he's like, but it's not that at all. He's like, they lack something everyone else has, which is an off button. They just don't stop. And at the end of the day, like, if we're optimizing for outcomes, then the most broken person will win. The person who has the absolute biggest, desire for achievement, the absolute biggest fear or pain that they're running away from, and the hardest impulse control. Now, impulse control, most people would agree, is a good thing. The other two, not as much. And so, what are we optimizing for? What problem are we solving? It's my favorite. It's probably the number one most frequently asked question that I ask to our portfolio companies whenever we're about to do anything, which is, what problem are we solving? If the problem that we're solving is that I want to be content, well, there's a lot of ways to do that. And you don't need to do all these other things. If the problem you're solving is that you want to be the richest man in the world, well, you're going to have a lot of superiority complex. You're going to have a lot of crippling insecurity, and you're going to have a lot of impulse control, and you're going to have to wait a long time.
There's a quote from Jason Pargin that says, accept that all of your heroes are full of shit. Your heroes aren't gods. They're just regular people who probably got good at one thing by neglecting literally everything else.
Yeah. I agree with the statement.
Fucking money. It's just so interesting to me. I've been thinking about this to do with Billy McFarland.
Let me just get this in.
Hit it.
And that's okay. Because if they wanted that, then that's the problem that they're solving for. Like, I get criticized all the time for work-life balance. People are like, well, you don't have any hobbies, Alex, and you don't whatever, right? And I'm like, I don't fucking want any. So why do I have to sacrifice things that I would prefer to do things I don't want to do to satisfy your objective measure of what you deem as work-life balance? Why?
So that's what this is where you were talking about. Was it optimized for the outcome, or what's the metric of success? That you were saying, like, what is it that people are optimizing for?
Right.
It seems to me that you have stepped back and decided axiomatically, this is the thing that I'm optimizing for.
That I enjoy most doing.
Yes.
I enjoy playing the game. And so everything I do is about the game.
Yes.
My podcast is called The Game. I draw pictures all day about business. I write books about business. I make content about business. I spend the rest of my time.
I've never seen a picture from you.
$100 million offers. A zillion pictures in there.
Oh, are they done by you?
100%. All of the drawings are mine. And $100 million leads has like 100 doodles in it. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Are you any good? Are they nice?
I think so.
Are they cute?
Yeah.
They got little animals in?
Yeah.
If they don't have animals in, I'm not going to look at them.
Oh, there's little bag of money, big bag of money. Like, that's how.
Nice.
Dead serious.
Sweet.
But no, but like, and I spend the rest of my day doing business.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, why don't you garden? Because I don't care.
Here's the other thing, right? I always talk about this. Steffi Graf, one of the greatest female tennis players of all time, and she gets tested when she's 10 years old, 11 years old, and she's in some tennis academy. And they gauge the players on two criteria. Uh-huh. They gauge them on desire to train and skill set.
All right.
And she was 10 out of 10 on both. Mm-hmm. So, okay, not only has she got the raw materials to make a phenomenal tennis player, but she'll outwork you, and to her, it won't even feel like work. That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's why I do think, for the people that look at yourself and say, Alex is on a road to burnout, it's because you are using your theory of mind about how you would feel if you had to work as much as you do.
Yes.
But okay, what is the thing that you can do longer than anybody else, and to them it looks like work, and to you it looks like play or feels like play? What would that be? Oh, well, for me it would be computer games or knitting or rock music or whatever it is. It's like, okay, so imagine if you just got to do that all day, but instead of it being rock music, it was fucking business. Someone commented the other day, was it you're sprinting on a treadmill? They were concerned that the pace that the show is going out at was going to cause me to burn out. And in retrospect, in 5 years' time, I might go, fuck yeah, I was moving too quick. But I don't think that. Like, I work at the pace that I like to work at. And I also like to see where those limits are. And that's exciting to me, to go, okay, just how much harder can I go here? And then again, you've got to temper it with, that's burnout. Like, that's just the beginning of it. And you only know that after you've burned out like 30 times. But it's trite to say after Atomic Habits by James Clear, right? But the intersection of like...
I told you guys that this book, Atomic Habit, is a good book. Look, I didn't even know that they were going to mention it in the book. And then just drop it. I talk about it like twice at the beginning of this video. You guys gotta get it, man. I'm gonna put the link in the description. Click on there. It's on Amazon. You can get it. You can get Audible. Whatever you can get, just make sure you get it, read it. It's a book that if you really practice whatever is in the book and then apply it to your life, try to change your bad habit and optimize for your good habit, you will see better changes and better way to optimize things, so that there are things that you won't need to think about doing them. You just do them, right? So it become like second nature.
What you're good at and what you can be paid for is like slap bang in the middle of it.
Slaves worked all the hours they were awake for their entire lives. In American history, in Egyptian history, in the rest of the world that had slaves, which is most of the world at some given point. I think like if they can do it, so can I. Now you're like, well, did they have a happy existence? Well, they didn't get to pick the work they did, but it means that you can work. That's if you have the cap behind you. You can work every hour of the day. I'm like, well, if you get to have the cheese and you get to eat the cheese the whole way you're going, then, I mean, there's the famous quote, the person who loves walking walks further than the person who loves the destination. Right. And so like, I think it's the same thing, but so many people want to project their idea of what they think your life should be like onto you. And it's just completely irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. Like if all I did, if I weren't married, right? Because people are like, okay, well, he is married and like I am in shape, but I also just like working out. But if I didn't have either of those things and all I did was work all day, more people would talk about the work-life balance thing for me than they currently do. And who cares? I fundamentally am like, you are going to die and you're not going to matter. And I'm going to die and I'm not going to matter. So why do I care about what you're going to say when you're not even going to show up to my funeral?
Who gives a shit?
All right, man. This is gonna be my last take on this video. The rest of the video you can find it on Chris Williamson podcast on his YouTube channel. It's right there. That's where I get it from. You can watch the rest of the video. We're about like 75% through the video. But the last take is just like, the idea is that I shouldn't really care that much about what other people think. We're all gonna die one day or the other. Within 100 to 500 years from now, whatever we're doing right now, nobody is even going to remember and it won't really matter. So live your truth, be yourself, and this life is to be lived. Once you live, at some point it's going to end. The people that you are caring for their opinion, the random people online, the random comments that you're afraid of, it doesn't really even matter because those people don't even know you, right? So even if at your funeral, probably not gonna show up. So it doesn't matter. Do what you believe is true. Do pursue what you want, and try. You're gonna fail. That's okay. You're gonna learn from the experience. You're gonna get better. You're gonna keep moving forward. Just try to. For me personally, the idea is just to meet the greatest version of myself, which is someone that I'm always chasing. It's an ideal of myself that I'm chasing, and in order to get to that ideal, I want to get better every single day. So that's the path that I chose, and I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to get to that point. Do what is best for you, right? Nowadays, we got too many advices online. We got too many information, the things that people want to put on us. So just gotta pick and choose what works for you, and don't pick those that don't work for you. So that's my last take on the video. It was a good video, a lot of values, a lot of things that can help moving forward in life, good advices. So before you go, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Until next time, my friend, have a blissful night.